Welcome back to Revelatorium, the podcast that comes around once a month, just about as often as I have had the fortune to bear witness to some sort of sky event. Basically, in these past 90 days, this month, I got to go to an astronomy night in the park and look through a big wide telescope to see the beautiful texture of the moon, the gorgeous topography of it. Just so gorgeous. I am like so pleased to live in a city where I can see the sky at night and the stars at night, because the irony of living in Los Angeles, and I'll like never get over this. I'll never get over it. I've gotten over a lot of other like weird hangups I had about LA. But one thing that was really troubling is that I didn't get to see the sky. Like I didn't get to see the stars at night. Like it really, the actual like pollution and the smog just covered it up. Like it was so rare. And growing up in the Bay Area, that was not the case. That was not the case. And here in Seattle, it's like going to a city park and being able to make a lot of things out, even with the light pollution, is so important to me. And I have every pleasure of just looking up with the naked eye to see it. But having access to a telescope, now that's a form of worship. I really do believe. Like a lot of people in STEM are very atheistic, but I'm like, I don't understand how you could look up at the sky every night and just not feel something a little cosmic going on. And especially because last month I saw the lunar eclipse, and then the month before that, I was treated to the magic of the Northern Lights on my birthday trip. I talked about that the last 2 episodes, or maybe just this last episode. But yeah, I just feel like I've really grown closer in my relationship with the sky over these past few months. And like, I love finding my fellow moon lovers out there. It's just such a pure thing to cherish. The moon is the one that really taught me how to yearn. That is a wistful entity. I'm always looking out for her in any phase. There's just so much wisdom to be gleaned from the moon. It's like an eternal force of inspiration. I look up at that thing and I'm like, you know what? Like, you cannot be waxing all the time. Sometimes you're waning. Sometimes you're waning. And that's like the yin and yang of it. That's the balance of it. And I think especially in a time where I felt like I have been pulled into excess, I guess the phrase would be, it brings me back down to earth, but in some ways it brings me up to the sky. And I don't think I've even recognized, like I do like to sort of recognize the motifs of my life and the things that do bring me meaning and the sort of like symbolism that feels grounding or like cosmic to me. And I do think the moon and stars are one of those. And I came across a pack of stickers of just like little, I bought it. It wasn't just like it appeared in my apartment. I bought them because I was thinking about doing the thing where on your paper calendar, you put like a star, like truly, this is like my gleekdom, my celestial interests, and my conscientiousness all really overlapped there because I was seeking a Rachel Berry way to mark accomplishment in my life of like, I don't even know what it was. Maybe it was drinking water. I think it was drinking water, which drink every time during this podcast, you lose my train of thought. Like I was listening to my own episode the other day for clarity, and there were times where I had to skip back because I was like, wait, how did I get from there to there? Weren't we just talking about that? And I'm like, if you kind of have to practice like full mindfulness to listen to this podcast, because I will depart from the station before you've even boarded the train. It's like, okay, you need to like stay in the moment with it. I'm like, I could barely even wash my dishes. I was like, I don't know in what context and environment you guys are able to like place these things. Maybe you just kind of listen to my psychobabble, and then when there is a phrase that piques your interest, you like lock back in. I don't really know, but I bought these stickers for this calendar, never really got off the ground with that one. Rocket ship did not blast off, okay? And then I came across them and I started this is also tying in my Marina and the Diamonds allegiance from high school and I just have been decorating myself for little parties, little events, little gatherings with a little star. And you know what? Next time I go to a little star party, next time I go to an astronomy night, I could wear one of those. Although a lot of times they do start after dark, so it wouldn't be super visible. But even today I left a few stars on and I didn't even really think about the fact that I was going to be talking about sky stuff. So stars, the moon, those are definitely like symbols that I am drawn to. And it's wonderful because every time I embrace celestiality, I get to reject commercialism, like learning things from the sky, quite literally free and accessible to everyone, except maybe not, LA residents or people in high. And that's like actually one thing that I'm like, I really do worry, because if at one point there's too much pollution and I can't see the sky, like I'm going to feel desperate, truly desperate. So stop paying for ChatGPT and literally walk outside your house at night. Could also be during the day, but the sky, like me, is a little bit more glittery in the evening hours. There's a little bit more shine happening. And that's why I go through the trouble of setting up a ring light to film this podcast, because I know that I'm a little bit more verbally adept at night. And I've just had so many life-affirming, long-ass conversations with friends after dark this week that it's obvious to me. Also, one of those conversations was about the Ride podcast briefly. And I didn't realize that's like Benny Drama and Mary Beth Barone's podcast together. And I didn't realize that the theme of that podcast was like every week, what are they riding for? And I was like, oh, that's a good format. And then I was watching Las Culturistas interview Natasha Rothwell and also Kate Blanchett, huge gets. And they have their whole like, I don't think so, honey segment. And I was like, you know what? When did podcasting get to be so late night show? You know what I'm saying? Like it really has transformed into like, you need to have your shtick. And I was like, damn, maybe I should and then I was like, you know what? I actually have a lot. I didn't really like make these out to be the program of Revelatorium. It was just sort of like, this is the template that I'll use. And that's one of the first revelations this month is actually about templates. But like the premise of this podcast is like, of course, a monthly digest of my revelations, what I'm taking from this month into the next and what I'm leaving from this month behind. And then your revelations on many of the same themes. So I'm like, that's pretty actually strong. So anyway, I've kind of fallen away from like naming every revelation and being like, this is my third revelation of the episode. But like, I am just looking at a bunch of bullet points on Notion every week, every month. And I hope you know that. But in accordance with that, one revelation I had this past month was truly about like the limitations of templates, like their utility, but also where they're a little fraught. And I really have come to the conclusion that for me, most templates or many templates are training wheels in that eventually you're meant to get off of them. Like they do provide structure in the early beginning days of you working on something, or you trying something, or you introducing something. But then eventually I do feel like the form should fall away and you should find your own footing outside of that like lattice. And in a way, like this is episode 28. I've done 27 of these before. I have used pretty much the same like Notion template. And yet I've, become more attuned to like, okay, but a month doesn't have to be an exact month with these podcasts. Like if this month is actually February 28th to April 5th, that's fine. Like it doesn't need to be so perfectly calibrated. And then if I want to do taking in the middle of my revelations and then go back to the rest of them and do leaving, like I can basically just experiment with the format and like move things around and shift them. And how this really sort of came to be in my mind was at a concert. I went to the concert of a couple of unnamed artists this past month. And I think both of them will actually come up in this episode because a live artistic performance can provide a lot of inspiration. And don't you ever forget that. Don't you forget about being a patron of the arts. Many of you are already offering your patronage, I know, by literally being paid patrons on my Patreon. Peter Piper picked a pail of peppers. And that's beloved. And I have a lot of projects cooking, and that money really does service my creative development. Like that does ensure that I have the means to save money for another period of sabbatical from a full-time job. It means that if I want to build a website, which I'm working on so I can get off of Instagram and have my own like more intentional newsletter. I can do that. I have money for us to print zines, which if you haven't checked out the Rev zine, that's the companion piece to this audio medium. So if you like visual media and want to be a patron of an independently made zine, you can follow at Revelatorium on Instagram. It's also Linktree, like the Linktree URL. So it's like li.nk or something, whatever. Linktree Revelatorium, it's there. Anyway, all this is to say, thank you for being patrons. And also I'm going to be hosting workshops, I think, on Patreon. I'm going to try my first one Thursday, April 17th. So if you'd like to become a patron, that'll be available to everyone on all the tiers. So 3, 5, or 10. And I'm going to be doing a workshop on like community building and pod mapping and basically like creating more structural like support for you in your life. Okay, I wasn't able to get this episode edited before the 17th, but I did want to say the recording of that workshop is now up on my Patreon on either the $3, $5, or $10 tiers, patreon.com/catharout. And in May, we're going to do a Crush Town Hall where everyone gathers to regale stories of their desire and spring flings. And then we're also going to be meeting in May to discuss The Right to Sex, which is our book club pick. What else would we be reading? A collection of modern feminist essays. So if you've never been a patron before or you have been and want to rejoin, great time to do so. I also do have a couple of free things up there as little goodies for checking out my page. So anyway, beautiful to be a patron of people online, but also like in your local scene, in your local community. Like both these acts were like touring musicians, but I do want to start seeing more. Well, I have been supporting like going to clubs and seeing DJs, but also like supporting local bands and doing that. Like it's definitely been easier as I befriend people who are just in the music scene, so they invite me to their shows. But I'm like, even if I don't get invited to a show, like I do want to seek those things out, and being a patron is so amazing. And I took a handful of my friends to one of my favorite events of the year, Moisture Festival in Seattle, and like it was so unbelievable. It's like my third year doing that, like bringing a host of people there to experience it with me, because it's like such a special comedy variety show. There's like tons of like just super kooky like comedy, but also like circus stuff, clowning, like just bizarre, really like creative acts that I'm like, how did these people even develop these? And so it's important to me to like keep those things going, because they bring my life so much cheer and so much folly. And we stayed after the show and we're talking to some of the performers in the lobby, and one of them was like so touched that I brought, you know, half a dozen people to the show with me, that he literally brought me over to meet the creative director. And then the creative director was so thankful, he literally gave me a hug and was like, how'd you get all these people to come here? Like, this is amazing. Like, do you do this every time? And I'm like, yeah, I just tell everybody I know, like, this is my favorite event of the year. And then they come through, and like, I got scared because I was like, is not everyone doing this? Is this that rare? Like, are people not going to events with their friends anymore? So I think, and it's true that like, you know, staying home and watching TV is very compelling for a lot of people. I like to do it at my choice times. Hacks is back on, thank God. Nobody told me. I was like, hello? And of course, staying home is generally cheaper, but like if you're going to go out, like spending money on a live show is such a good thing. Anyway, this particular live show, I would actually count as like negative inspiration, which sounds so harsh and cruel. And that is why I'm leaving this person unnamed, because I do not need to bring ill will towards an unblocked person just trying to put themselves out there. What's that Marnie Michaels quote? Where she's like, yeah, it's all make fun of the girl who tried, you know? No, basically I went to this concert and I was really excited because there was like a few songs that this artist has that I have just been really obsessed with these past couple years, and they like really have meant something to me, and it's been really freeing to listen to them, and having the chance to see those songs performed live and get to sing and dance to them, not just in my bathroom while I'm getting ready for bed, but with other people who appreciate it, where the artist can be in that presence is like so special. And one thing I also noticed is that this artist had like on their Instagram templates, prompts for dressing up for the show. And there have been a few artists I've noticed take part in this over the past couple years, where they basically do like an Instagram carousel and they'll have like a few different themes for like how to dress up for their show. So like maybe one theme is like ethereal night angel, and then another one is like, and then another one's like Western baddie or like whatever. They just have like a few different prompts or like themes to how you could dress for the show. And I didn't see these before the show. The people that I was going with sent them, and I was like, oh, damn, I was just going to wear whatever I was going to wear, you know? But now I feel like, oh, this is something that people are participating in, and I like to be festive, you know? I like to take part. I wouldn't say I'm the kind of person that's putting together my Halloween costumes 4 months in advance. I'm more so the kind of person where I have 8 months in advance, I'll have an iPhone note just contemporarily keeping track of like costume ideas that come up, because I feel like one thing I've learned in my creative ethic is that I can't trust myself to remember my ideas, and that's fine. I'm just a loser. Like, I lose things. I'm not good at claiming, and like, and maybe that's good. Maybe that's actually beautiful. But I do kind of have to write ideas down when I have them, and then I can reference them later and kind of like screen through and see what like makes sense and what is relevant. But anyway, I saw these prompts and I was like, okay, I don't want to like go out and buy new things just for this, but like I will look in my wardrobe and I will take part. And I had fun dressing up, and I was really grateful that the artist encouraged people to like take a concert as an opportunity to break form, to step out of conformity and literally put on a costume, like take the chance to express yourself a little more widely than you maybe would on an average basis. But then as I started thinking more about it over the course of the night, I was like, in a perfect world, we wouldn't need these templates, right? Like, we would be able to say, and I was sort of almost missing the opportunity to say, oh, well, it could also just be, you know, you're going to a concert, you want to dress up, and you just let maybe that artist or that album's like what you interpret the themes to be to like inspire you, you know, like what you've kind of like taken away from that. Like, I definitely know for like this upcoming Haim album, the way that all of their album covers have been like recreations of, well, in some ways mimetic, right? Recreations of early 2000s paparazzi photos, Kate Moss, Nicole Kidman. And so this just popped into my head, but if I were to go to their show, I would probably try to dress up like that. You know, I'd pick some meme and like just try to recreate it the best I could. Like, that's kind of how I would pay tribute or patronage. And it's also just, you can just dress up and stunt on them. Like, you don't have to like have it be super themed, but I was sort of like, yeah, I feel like this sort of like Instagram carousel concert dress attire situation in some ways feels born out of the way that we lost live patronage for a few years, because venues were shut down during lockdown. And I know this has been discussed ad nauseum, but I feel like this is one piece of it that I'm like, I think that I wonder, because I wasn't going to concerts in the 70s, 80s, 90s pre-internet, but I'm like, I'm pretty sure people were dressing the fuck up for those. Pretty sure I've seen the Woodstock footage and I'm like, they look amazing. And so there is this like precedent of that. And I think we maybe just lost the precedent. And even at the concert itself, the artist was really sort of dictating how they wanted the crowd to respond. So it's like, okay, at this point, we're all going to crouch down, and then here we're going to jump up. Or it was like a lot of like literally turn to the person next to you and like reach out and touch them, or like, and I was like, I don't know about that. Like, and I've spoken, you know, out and proud about how much I love physical affection, but I'm like, I don't know about a stranger at a concert. I think we should reject our fear of each other. I think we should turn towards each other, but I don't know if we need to do that. as the first thing. And then our artist was also saying like, I want everyone to leave here with new friends. So like turn to someone, like get their phone number. And I was like, I just feel like we're cooked if we're depending on artists to literally stimulate what should already be happening at concerts. And I recognize that I'm sitting in an armchair. I hate to be an armchair expert because I'm not a touring musician. Like, I am a performer. I'm a stage performer. I can understand that perspective of it, but I'm not a touring musician and I don't quite know. And I know this is sort of a foul attitude, but I feel like getting that prescriptive can be limiting. Like that sort of template for like, I'm showing you guys exactly how I want you to behave at these concerts in some ways does sort of like maybe restrict the creativity or the expansiveness of like how the audience wants to respond. And of course, just like the moon and the sun, there's yin and yang. And I recognize that like it can go too far the other direction where if the crowd doesn't know what to do, then you do need to sort of prompt them. And like you do need to like, and I do appreciate when, you know, the drummer tells you when to clap, you know, but it's like, could be nice. I just like wish I could have been a part of concert culture. Yeah. Like before the 2000s and just seeing how people were responding, because there's also just a sense at concerts now that like everyone has their phones out. So like in some way you like are being surveilled. It's not like a discrete experience that will like never pass through any other parts of your life. Like you could see the back of your head on someone's video on Twitter of the concert, you know? And so it's like whatever you do in there is not just like lost to that venue and that night. It's in some ways like preserved. But I felt my spirit decay slightly in that concert venue that night because I was just like, I think just the fact, it was just like, I wasn't that mad at the behavior. It was just like the fact that this is what we're being called to do because things are this bad. It was just like a real reckoning for me of like, oh, this is something else. And also I would say the crowd was also a lot younger. So it's like maybe they are just newer to going to concerts and they need more of that. But I also just found the artist performance itself and like the costuming and like kind of the props and stuff, it just felt very contrived and like what it actually felt like. And I was disappointed to see how much it did feel like a template, how much it did feel like this artist was drawing on what has been successful and popular before. And then, of course, every artist is drawing on what has been successful and popular before, and you're drawing on so many influences. But in this case, it felt like this artist's whole sort of like career and come up on TikTok was sort of predicated on if you like so-and-so, you'll like my music. And I think that's a very compelling marketing strategy. And I think you got to do what you got to do to get your career off the ground. But I also recognize that like at some point, you've got to sort of get away from stitching yourself so much to the template of like what's just predominantly successful and like not just like, you know, making sure all your songs sound like that artist that you're inspired by. Like my favorite songs from this artist genuinely were so like original and I found them to be like novel and there was something like really fresh there and I was really drawn to. But as I was listening to the concert, I was just noticing how much the music did just sound like rehashing something. And I think that like works well to some extent, right? I'm not saying that like templates are like futile. It's just sort of like it can confront your creativity if you're always focused on like, okay, commercially, what's going to perform well? Like commercially, what's going to do well? Because that's how you end up making 8 albums that all sound the same. And maybe that's like safe. You know, it's like safe. It's like conservative because it's just like, okay, I'm sticking to what has been, literally the definition of conservative, and like not taking too many risks. But I think what I miss in that process is like really feeling the personhood in what they're creating. It's like, what is really reflective of like you and like your personality and like your interests, your life motifs, like what is going on that is really authentic to you. And I think as an artist, it just takes time to get there. Like when I was making YouTube videos at first, I was truly just copying all of my favorite YouTubers. I was watching Emily June. I was watching Beauty Baby 44, Strawberry Electric 48. Like Mac Barbie '07. I had so many templates to draw upon of what I saw that was working well. And so I started in their image. Like I started doing that. And even just my vocal delivery, my styling, the music, the phrases I would use, like it was all borrowed, right? And now, it's almost 14 years on YouTube, like nearly 15 years later, my videos are still references of other videos that I watch, and they are still drawn on movies and TV and media and art that like is compelling to me. But I think it's just like there's a lot more room for like my intuition and what feels true to me rather than thinking about, okay, and what is meant to be. Like even in this podcast, having a little reoccurring intro, welcome back to Revelatorium, the podcast that comes around once a month just about as often as blank. Like that does give me a threshold to cross over so that I know that like I'm now in the stew. This is my living room, but it's also the stew. So it's like, okay, living room's turned off, stew is turned on. And like, let's make sure that I'm like focused on this project and like this part of my craft. And I think having that reoccurring intro just gives me a nice like launch pad so I don't have to be as creative about how I want to start the episode every week. It gives me a template, but then I also made it so that the intro template already has a spot to like add fresh themes in every month. So it's like I really do get just every single month get to think about what do I want to say in that blank? Like what do I want to say happens once a month? Like how do I start that episode, not to be too, inside the actor's studio with it, inside the podcaster's studio. That would be a crazy show. It's like, I don't want to be sitting here for hours thinking about the hook for the beginning of the episode from scratch. So I need like 10 words to get me going, then I'll take care of the rest kind of thing. So it's like, I still use templates, but I don't want the whole episode to feel like it was just copy pasted, And I was also relating this to divesting from partiful, because I think one of the reasons partiful is so compelling is because it has offered people a template for hosting a gathering, because that is something that you are not educated on, enabled on how to do. And I think in some part, I'm kind of glad that not everyone goes to cotillion, not everyone has like a strong framework of how a party has to be, because I think I have really enjoyed viewing my gatherings and my little events and my little social inclinations as chances for me to express myself and be creative. And like getting to go to somebody, I went to somebody's party this past month and I was like, oh, this party is so true to my friend. Like this is so true to them. This is exactly how I'd imagine a party that they would host would be. Like this makes so much sense. It's so authentic. It didn't feel like they were just doing something that they'd seen someone else do that was successful and they did it in their image. It was like they made it according to their own style. And I just think that's so beautiful and sweetie. And I don't want us to lose that. And I don't think partyful means that we're like tearing that all away. But I do think the invite is a piece of the gathering, and partyful offers this like monopoly on the invite of like, this is the way to invite people. This is the most convenient way. This template gives you the chance so you don't have to design a whole invite, because genuinely when I'm designing invites, like I just designed the one I'm doing for April, and like it took me like an hour. Like it was like a real, I was in the Pick Monkey stew, Photoshop for people who do not want to watch tutorials on how to use it. It took me like an hour and I was like, this is a lot. I would rather go to a party and have it happen than have this chore of making the invite prevent someone from wanting to host a party. I am hopeful that Partyful has encouraged hosting culture and it has given people sort of confidence that they can do this because they're seeing something that has been sort of like accepted as like a good form of like invitation. But as I've spoken about quite a bit, I've enjoyed the fact that like I started with Partyful too. Well, I mean, I had birthday parties in high school and we had lots of parties in college, and those were mostly Facebook groups. So like I have been like making invites like that. And then when I moved to Seattle, the first couple of things I hosted, I did put on Partiful. And then once I got my footing, I was like, oh, I don't need these anymore. Like that just offered one idea for how to do it. But like I want to be informed and inspired by like other ways of inviting. And I cannot tell you how delightful, like literally full of delight it is to receive an invite from somebody that's new to you. Like one of my friends invited me using postcards. Another one invited his neighbors over for dinner by dropping a little envelope at their doors. And inside was a little slip where you could mark yes or no for your RSVP, and then you could drop it back off. And I'm like, that's so darling. And I have an idea for how I want to invite people to something this summer that's going to be so darling and like so cutesy and like so true to me, and also like really just offer the person receiving it the moment to be cherished. Like I did this for you because I think you're so special and I want you at this thing that I think is going to be special. Like I think a lot of us feel scared to make it known to other people that we want them there. But on Partiful, it's like you're not even texting that person half the time. You're just literally clicking their name and then it just auto invites them. And it just feels like it takes out takes away like a lot of the invitation creativity, which like you can make your own little design and upload it to Partiful. So like is what I'm saying. It's like a template has some porosity to it. There are some spots you can fill in and like color it in with your own style, of course, but it's like the levers are limited. And even Instagram as a template for how to like share the happenings of my life is a template that I'm no longer appreciating anymore because I think it's been sullied and I just find it to be boring to get to know people on there. And I just worry sometimes it's tipping more into surveillance than it is like a true intimacy you're forming with people on there. So I'm both like revering the template as a very useful tool to the beginner, but I'm also admonishing it for like sometimes wrapping itself so tightly around the user that you feel constricted by it and that it's not, you can't envision another way of doing things. And so in comedy, they call it hacky if your jokes are just like ripped from some really popular source, or like for me, one joke that's gotten really hacky is like, yeah, I've been dating again. I've been on the apps, Zell. And it's like, okay, what the fuck? Like, it's just, like I just heard so many versions of that joke. And the first time that template was created, it was really funny. It wasn't hacky. It was really funny. I thought it was really clever. That was really original, unique, probably authentic to the person that said it. And now it just feels like people know that that's commercially successful, that is viable, that it is like appreciated or accepted or approved of. And so they just use that because it's like safer. And so it's like, yes, at the beginning of your comedy career, you're going to have a lot more things like that. But then as you develop your sense of it, you'll come into your own style. And I'm like very eager and looking forward to seeing like what my own comedy career would look like as I continue. But anyway, I did get to ask you guys about templates, so I'll read those later because y'all had some very interesting examples of templates. Like some templates you're using that I would never have even expected, like memes as a template, and in a very meta way, the Rev survey that I send out every month to get your revelations on these themes, that is a template. It's like I quite literally copy the Google form every time and make it in the one's image. And I put a new photo in every month and I come up with fresh prompts every month. Of course, taking and leaving stay the same. So I'm making it my own, but maybe at some point I'll be able to break away and like stop using Google Forms, and maybe I'll find something that's even more like divined to my own tastes and likings. So anyway, now I'm kind of looking at like all of my revelations, and I feel like these could all be analyzed as templates, but one sort of template that exists is the pickup line. And I think my knowledge of what a pickup line is was very much informed by like heteronormative trappings of there's a guy at a bar and he wants to talk to a girl. And so the first thing that he says is like a pickup line where it's like, are you from Tennessee? Because you're the only 10 I see type of thing. And that it's like this corny joke, but it just is like an icebreaker essentially. And I have never like, I guess when I like talk to strangers at parties or at bars or wherever I am, I'm not thinking of what's like my pickup line going to be. I don't put it in those terms. I don't think about it as like adopting that template. The reason I don't like that conventional type of pickup line is that it's not like personalized to the person. It's just like something that you have in your reserves that is just universal. It doesn't have anything to do with the person usually. And it doesn't feel like attuned, right? For me, I think I do actually kind of use pickup lines sometimes, but it's much more open-minded. Like I don't have an outcome that I'm trying to guarantee by asking these things. So like, for example, I recently went to one of my favorite dive bars and we were talking as we're walking over about the term lifelong learner. Like somehow that came up and I just felt really driven to gather data at that bar that night and report back to my friends of like, okay, we're 3 for 3 on being lifelong learners. Like how common is identification with that phrase? Like I was just naturally fixated on that. And it wasn't like 30 minutes before I left to go to the bar, I was like, what's my pickup line going to be? It's like not a template that I feel like I need because I feel like in the moment I can just flex and like I have the ability to invent something right then and there. So I was like, okay, perfect. This can be my little, I love it when something just naturally comes up because I'm like, okay, perfect. This can be my question of the night. You know, at my high school reunion, I was going around asking everybody, where are you at on the Kinsey scale? You know, because I want to enter the conversation at a certain place. I don't appreciate like, I was being such a brat the other night because I was a +1. That's one of my favorite identities to hold. I'm such a fucking +1. And it was so funny because I was a +1 at someone's birthday party. And somebody at the party, people kept kind of asking, I think one person asked, what do you like to do in your free time? And I was appreciating that question because I understood it to be, you know, the person is interested in knowing that from you. It's a pretty, like, safe bet, you know? It's not like super original, right? But it's a safe bet. And it's at least it's not asking what do you do for work, right? It's what do you do in your free time. But I still felt resistant because I was like, oh shit, if I tell you what I do in my free time, it is a list of 18 things, you know? Versus his was like playing video games, learning guitar, birding. I don't even know what it was, but it was like 3 things mainly. And I was like, God damn, like, I just don't, like, I'm like, the answer that I think he's hoping, I'm just like, I just said it like it was, which was what I do in my free time, too much. Too much, because I'm not getting enough sleep. I literally just told you guys that. Like, I'm just doing too much. So that's kind of what I said. And I was kind of hoping, like, he'd be able to play off of that. But I don't think it was as literal of an answer that he was looking for. But I was like, maybe conversationally then we're not a good match because if you're looking for someone to speak literally, I'm going to say that word a lot, but it's not going to happen much. I'm going to say literally da-da-da-da-da, but I'm going to be saying some lightly coherent thought, you know? I'm going to be saying a lot of half-baked things that are concocted, you know? Somebody else asked me, I managed to... so impressed with the person's apartment that I managed to befriend the person's neighbor that lived upstairs, and then he offered to give me a tour of his place, and I was like, totally. So I left the party to go to I was like, this is the 3rd time that I've befriended someone's neighbor and then like gone over to their apartment that same day. I'm like, I love neighbors. I just came across this note that I'd written to myself that I was actually talking about on a Patreon live stream from September of 2023. It was not a letter to myself. It was a letter to my angels that I burned because a psychic told me to. And hey, that's a template I'm going to fill in. So I did that, and I did take a photo, which might be breaking the rules, but it clearly wasn't, because one of the things I wrote was like, dear angels, like I wish you to bring my neighbors that live under your divine being closer together with regularity. And now, like a year and a half later, like I really am buds with my neighbors, and like we do see each other very regularly, and like I do feel a lot, like I really have gotten to the point of my neighbors are my buddies, and other people's neighbors are my buddies too. Like I've made such strides on this, and this is something I've wanted to like build out in my life. And so you gotta stop and sometimes clip the daffodils, you know? Appreciate what you've grown in your garden, even if you don't remember planting it, you know? But he asked me, he was like, I think he said, what are you? And I said, I'm a +1. Because that night, my identity felt like +1. Like multiple times, I was like, I'm a +1. And then people thought that me and my friend that I was with were dating. And I was like, sure. Like I am dating my friends. Pretty much. That's what it feels like. So people were a little confused because I wasn't speaking so literally, but I was like, I'm a +1. And then he kind of followed up and like wanted to know, like he was kind of getting, I could tell that he was getting to, okay, but like, what do you do for work kind of thing? And I just took the opportunity to be a little facetious and say that I'm a +1. And I was like, oh, you know, the loneliness crisis, people are like really losing friends. A lot of people, when they get married, they pay people to be in their bridal party so that they look like they have friends. Like I'm one of those. And unfortunately, here's the problem is like, I like to be facetious, but I'm a little bit too confident to be facetious, and people have trouble. And he was like, he said something to the effect of like, I don't think you're telling the truth, but I do believe you. I was like, that's scary. That's scary. And that is the soft social power of having confidence. And I think that I, ironically enough, shied away from saying that I'm confident for like so long, even though people have always clocked me like that. But I think more than confident, I am outspoken. Like I am really confident about what I think and what I believe, and I'll put it on the line. Like I will really deliver that package with very clear postage. I'm like, here is exactly what's going on. And one of my other revelations this month was actually about the formula for charisma, because I was talking to two of the most charismatic people I know. Got to have two almost back-to-back couch conversations with them, you know, where we are just plunked in and opining. And interestingly enough, both of those conversations just got to the arena of sales, because in one way or another, all three of us have found ourselves in sales jobs. I don't consider myself currently to be in a sales job. I was working tech sales, and of course, putting out stuff online, I have the opportunity to sell things, is what a sponsorship is on YouTube. Here's what I'll say is, and this is the real Ask Revelatorium cut, let's hope that my management and sponsors aren't listening this deep into a random episode, but I do not spend any charisma on my sponsorships. Like I really hold my charisma for the video, because I'm trying to sell you guys on my ideas. Like otherwise, what would I be doing here? You know what I'm saying? And I do feel like I've had a shift. I tried to calibrate my content and have it be, I try to calibrate what I say so that I'm mostly talking in first person. Like I don't want to be saying like, you need to give up templates and you need to do da-da-da-da-da. I'm just saying like, I've understood that like templates can be training wheels. Like I try to just really keep it to like what, and even in my most recent YouTube video, which thank you for all the love and support on that one, took me like 4 months to hatch it. And actually it's literally been like almost 16, 20 months in the making, that video. Like, so it's sort of a manifesto in ways. I love when I put out a manifesto. Like I don't do it that often on my YouTube channel, so I really do appreciate that when I do, people do pay it some attention, because I'm like, I really stuffed it all in there. But in that video, I'm talking about like what I've gained out of moving closer to my friends. And I'm not ever in that video saying, and you should do it. It's obviously implied that like if you're watching the video, you must have some interest in doing it. So I'm just sharing my perspective. Of course, a lot of people on the internet are there in bad faith for whatever fucking reason. Stop doing that. Stop watching videos because you just want to attack them. And that's me. And see how sort of like condescending that is when I'm like, stop doing that. Da, 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 da. It's like I'm more so talking to myself than I am you in that situation where it's like I hate when I find myself watching something in a mean-spirited way just to like take the person down because I'm like, this is literally cuckoo. Like, what am I doing? But yeah, I think in a large part, like why I've found an audience online is because of my outspokenness. That's what I found people wanted me to do on TikTok is like, yes, storytelling and yes, just like sharing the narrative of my life and my learnings. But like a lot of it is like, I have this theory, I have this framework, I feel strongly about it, and I'm going to share it with you. And I've always had a very unblocked throat chakra, and that's important for charisma. Like charisma, you need to, not that I'm like when I was trying to crack the formula of like why we all got sort of wrapped into sales and using sales as a proxy, like what would it take to be good in sales as a proxy for what is charisma? Because I think unfortunately it's kind of linked because sales is sort of the co-optation of charisma. Like you can use your charisma for many things. You can use it to bring people together. You can use it to encourage people to be patrons of the arts, but you could also use it to be a fascist, you know? So there's a range. But the formula we came up for of like what charisma is really, because in some ways we wanted to figure out like, is this something you can train? Is this something you can teach? Or like, why do I feel that these two people on my couch have it? Like, what is it coming from? And so we kind of developed charisma being confidence, outspokenness, curiosity, and authenticity. So my friend owns a natural beauty store, and in order to sell skincare products and fragrances and cosmetics, like when someone's trying those things on, you need to say confidently with authenticity that looks good on them, right? Like if you're trying to sell someone something, you have to be outspoken about how good that thing is, how beautiful the moon is under a telescope. You'd be outspoken about that thing and like have the gift of gab and like be able to just like really like convey why you like that thing. Then be confident and authentic about like, and that thing looks good on you and that works for you and you can pull that off and I believe this. And then also having the curiosity to be interested in that person, be interested in that thing that you're learning about, to convey to that person. You have to be genuinely interested, and people can feel when you're just faking that charm and it's not real. And it's like, it's so clear to me spending time with them that those are the traits that like we have in common, is being really genuinely interested in other people. Because when you're really genuinely interested in someone, the questions that you can ask, the things that you're curious about, they're just so much more personalized, and that makes someone feel special and tuned to and attended to. Like, I feel like I'm coming up on those things again and again, but that's the formula we've come up with. Charisma is confidence, outspokenness, curiosity, and authenticity. If you have other things that you think, put them in the comments because it's too late for me to grab another Rev survey for this episode. And also, I forgot to say earlier, but if you have any type of ongoing relationship with the moon or the sky, whatnot, would love to hear about that too on the Spotify comments or YouTube comments. Either way, that's a wonderful way to be a patron, is to leave your thoughts below so that I can get to know you just a little bit. And that's a free way to do that. In any case, I never finished my lifelong learner thing. Basically, I ran a mini experiment. I want to report on the results to you tonight. that in one night, I asked 24 different people at this bar if they consider themselves a lifelong learner. And in your head right now, guess how many said yes. Like I said, do you consider yourself a lifelong learner? No context, no question before that. That was the first thing I asked like a bunch of people that I both knew and people that I'd never met before. How many of 24 do you think would say yes? Because the answer was 24. Like 100% lifelong learner rate. And I couldn't figure out, and I thought like, I don't know. I don't know why I thought any different. It's also interesting because I've been asking people as a follow-up now on the second wave of my curiosity is how many do you think would say yes? Because I'm like, do other people think being a lifelong learner is like a trait held by everyone, or do they think that that's more rare? And I guess the reason it even came up for me, or I had preconceived notions of it, was I remember my first job out of college. When we were going around the room and sharing about ourselves, one person was, really hitting on the point that he's a lifelong learner and then that's really important to me. And then somebody else was like, oh, I also consider myself a lifelong learner, da, da, da. And it felt like if it's worth mentioning in your intro, that it is some sort of like signifier about you, or it sets you apart, or it is something that is like in the way that if you say, oh, I'm a skateboarder, it's like not everyone's a skateboarder, right? So it's like something that's like, oh, that's like that person's thing. And I'd never really questioned it or come back around to it until now, because I'm like, I'm obviously a lifelong learner. I feel like all of my friends are, because that makes you a more interesting person. But I'm like, does anybody have resistance to that? Does that feel like, I don't know, like nerdy or like too academic for some people? Because not everybody is taking classes in their adulthood, right? And I don't think that's what it requires to be a lifelong learner, but I feel like when it gets really serious, sometimes you have to sign up because you're like, I need to have this be regimented in my life. But maybe others are just better at like ad hoc time on it. Anyway, I kind of do want to move on from this point, but I just thought it was so actually esteemed and heartwarming and life affirming that people were so inclined to like identify with that. And I was like, oh. And then that could be a wonderful segue into, and what are the things that like you're learning about right now? Like if I asked that to strangers at the bar as a quasi pickup line, and then they said yes, and I happened to want to talk to them more, that just gave me like so many pathways to talk to people. I didn't really have too many ongoing conversations from that pickup line, but I'm like, that's the kind of thing that I can wield. And that's like my, like if the pickup line is a template, that's my way of like templatizing talking to strangers, because that's not a personalized thing. It's like I'm not asking something that's directly about what they're wearing or what they ordered at the bar or whatnot. It's like, no, it's just a canned thing. I'm asking everyone. But in some ways that makes it easier because it's like, oh, I'm just running this little thing. Do you mind answering? Do you consider yourself a lifelong learner? But again, I think people can tell when you're genuinely interested in the answer to a question versus you're just saying something because you know it's going to guarantee you some sort of outcome or result or whatnot. Okay. I also realized this month that in a sort of, I don't really know when people say I had a breakthrough with my therapist, what qualifies as a breakthrough? Like, what does that actually feel like? But actually, this will be the last breakthrough I'll have with my therapist because I actually ended therapy this week, and I did it in such an amazing way. I was actually astonished at how much better it was to do this than to give in to the predominant narrative of like ghosting your therapist. I feel like that's also gotten hacky at comedy shows. People always talking about ghosting their therapist. I'm like, and I feel like they say it in like a prideful way, but I'm like, ghosting is like literally the most low effort thing you could do. Like you'll never like impress me by saying you ghosted someone. That doesn't take effort. What actually takes, and I'm like, I need to take a deep breath because I'm like, why am I getting mad about this? But like, it does take effort and courage to have a breakup, like have a breakup in a like respectful way, in a semi-compassionate way. Like it kind of felt like a confirmation that like I am ready to take a break from therapy just by the sheer virtue of me having like the skill set to go about it in the way I did. Because I basically and we'll get to the breakthrough that I actually had in a bit, but basically the session before, she'd asked me, because I was just talking about how like overwhelmed I am because again, I'm doing too much with my free time, but there's not like one thing that I really want to drop or like pull away from. But then I was biking home and I was like, actually maybe therapy is a thing that I want to pull away from or drop from, because I just been feeling week over week that like it takes me, because I bike there, it's like an hour and a half commute round trip. And then the session itself is an hour. So it's like kind of like a 3-hour excursion every Monday, or not every Monday, but like it was actually every other. But even that cadence, it just felt like the time wasn't poorly spent, but it was also like, I'm not sure if I'm making the best use, like, or if I'm the best even like candidate for therapy right now. So then I was like, okay, perfect. I'll let her know at the next session that like I want that to be my last one. Because what I didn't want to happen was be biking home and realize the session I just had was my last one without talking to her about it. Because I wanted to check in, because if she had any concerns about like, no, dude, like you need this, I would want to hear those out at least. So I texted my therapist's sister and I was like, should I tell her at the beginning of the session or the end? And she was like, tell her at the beginning so you can work through like your therapeutic plan. And I was like, totally. And so then basically we opened up the session and I just shared what I shared with you guys. And she was like, that makes a lot of sense. Like from my perspective, like you're not in crisis. I feel strongly about like the support and the upkeep and sort of like the practices you have to go to, and we can talk about those as well. And she was also speaking to like, without me even prompting it, she was speaking to like, there is this sort of like cultural narrative now. Like it used to be very stigmatized to go to therapy. And now, at least in this sort of milieu, people are like, you're not a good person if you're not in therapy. And that's like a little strong verbiage wise, but like, it's sort of like, oh, like if you're not in therapy, then you couldn't possibly be healing or like working on yourself. And I have felt that way towards people before, where I'm like, oh, I actually really think you would benefit from therapy and I wish you were in it. But you can never convince someone to do that for themselves. But for me, I've had this perennial question of like, do I need this? Like, am I in this for the right reasons? Are my sessions sort of shallow? Like, do I need support for my mental health in that way? And she really gave me closure on like, because of course I still had a little bit of like doubt or like fear that I was going to regret this or whatnot. But I was like, it's never permanent. Like I always can come back into the fold. But I think right now I'm just in a spot where I am looking for more collective forms of support. And like that feels a lot more reinforcing to me, especially because the past few conflicts I've been having, I have found immense help from being in community and like my people knowing my people and like meeting my people's people and having people that are in the same context that can offer me like guidance and support, knowing the nuance, knowing that person. Maybe they've been friends with that person longer than I have and they have gone through the same thing with them, or like they were in the room with me when that person said that thing and this is how they interpreted it. Like having a little bit of that before I go to approach the conflict with the person, like that feels more poignant in a way than trying to catch my therapist up to speed on like all of the context around these things. But I'm like, ultimately, like she'll never know these people and that's not her fault. That's not her job. But I'm like, if most of the things that I'm going to therapy for are like interpersonal, I do feel like going to interpersonal sources of support for those like makes sense. Like it's like warranted. Because I really liked going to therapy when I was doing my module on like perfectionism and I was going through acceptance and commitment therapy. And like those things gave me really helpful frameworks to work through like cognitive distortions and what that. And that all feels very personal. But the interpersonal stuff, I'm like, or even just thinking about when I was grieving the loss of my best friend in college, grief support group was life-changing for me. And I think when I experience grief profoundly in that way again, like I will want to turn to a support group, because it's not exactly that I need someone's counsel on the matter or to hear me out. It's like sometimes I just want to hear from other people's experiences on the same subject, you know? And your therapist isn't going to, you know, like it's a different like form that I'm looking for basically. So that's one thing that I'm leaving behind this month. But the final sort of like breakthrough I had in that session, just by like just in sort of musing about my life to her, was that interpersonally, when it comes to desire or building a relationship or the erotic, whatnot, sometimes I like the maze and I don't want a path. Because I was talking to her about how I'm like, oh, I wish it were just like more clear cut, you know, if you're going to be rejected by something or someone, or like when this opportunity is going to come up, or like when this moment's going to happen between the two of you. It's like there's so much like mystery. And I find myself in some ways like I want the answers. I want my fortune told. But then the more that I was talking, she kind of clocked my shit, and she was just kind of like, I think we both kind of clocked at the same time, or it was like, clearly I do like the slow burn and I do like a little bit of the confusion. And I liking confusion is so funny to me. Like I like being confused. Like I like that I can't figure it out, because it just keeps my Mercury in Aquarius spinning and spinning and spinning in space. And so sometimes I know that like I could just march forward like 10 paces and like get there. But sometimes I'm like, let me walk the labyrinth. Like, let me actually, even if I know that this is going to be the way out, let me just walk the labyrinth and like experience a little bit of the mystic passage of things, you know? And that's all vague, but one clear way to put it is like the way some, and I'm going to gender it, men initiate a kiss with you is so heavy-handed. Like it's so much a path, not a maze. Like it's so like, I think back to like my first kiss and so many kisses I've had since then. If a guy's like, oh, hey, let's go check this out over here, I'm like, oh, he's trying to get me alone. He's trying to kiss me. Like, and then it's true. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I knew I was walking the path. I saw the fucking signposts. I've walked on this trail before. It's marked on my all trails as a least favorite. No, I would rather it be a surprise to both of us, perhaps, or like I would rather not force the moment or like convene the chance for it. Like, of course, like you're going to have to like shoot your shot and make moves. But I'm like, I want to at least be closer to the rim. Like, I don't want to be taking a half court shot. Like, I want to feel like things are moving and I'm moving with them. Okay, last 3 revelations. This is such a full episode. Clearly this month I have been waxing. You know what? That would be actually fucking cute. Instead of taking and leaving, if I said waxing and waning, that could be cute. That could be cute. That's taking the template and making it my own, or making it in the image of the moon, my favorite girl. Anyway, sticking to matters of the interpersonal, because that's kind of one of our favorite subjects here at Revelatorium. I've been thinking about mean compatibility, like the compatibility of meanness, and not moralizing your friends, but just accepting the incompatibility of that. Because I feel like there are some friends where I'm like, so much of our friendship is possible because we're mean in the same way, we're judgmental in the same way, our sense of humor is aligned, like the little reads we give are legible to both of us. And there's some people that I've met who they're mean, and I'm also a little mean, but our means don't meet in the middle. Like, our means aren't overlapping, they're not compatible, and how that can make you feel misunderstood or misrepresented. And I'm not talking about being like, maybe I am talking about being cruel a little bit, but I think it's like very taboo to talk about the ways in which we're like mean, like in the ways in which we can be mean as people. And as an example, like snark pages, which if you're not aware, God bless, your mind is free. Skip ahead so you don't have to learn. but I will explain if you do. They're basically these like subreddits where people take, any public figure and they just basically preened through their life, everything they're posting, they surveil the shit out of them, and then they basically pick apart everything they do. Extremely bad faith, just attacking them relentlessly, and it's very maladaptive. And ultimately, I understand the desire. I understand the desire to be a little bit mean. Totally. Am I saying mean things about some people that are public figures? Absolutely. Absolutely. But I think it's so different doing that within the group chat or in the comfort of your living room than in a public forum where the person you're being mean about can see you being mean. Like, I'm kind of like, we need outlets to be mean. We should be able to express that side of ourselves, or at least just like find ways to like process it. Because I'm like, yeah, you're going to be at moments in your life, you're going to be a little bit mean. And let's just hope the people around you just kind of let you know when it's out of line, but also understand when maybe it's just you're irritable because you're in pain, or, like there's so many ways to be mean. But I enjoy the fact that I don't have to be on snark pages, because I've found people that I can let that out with and like get that out of my system without it like polluting up more mind space. And on the topic of compatibility, I have been struggling with homogeneity, specifically in like a social setting in your social life. I've really come to realize this month that I really value heterogeneity in my friendships and like eclecticism and like just a lot of variety. And I really feel stifled when I'm in a social setting that feels too homogenous. I think it's definitely identity based, and it's also like variety in discovery of like how I come to find those relationships is like, I don't want my whole life to be friends from work. I don't want my whole life to be friends from school. I don't want my whole life to be friends from this one friend group. Like, I just start to feel itchy. Like, I talked about social promiscuity last week. And I think a part of that too is like the reason I need to be socially promiscuous and not stick to like one friend group is that I have found that sometimes friend groups can be very homogenous. And this comes back to the identity thing, homogenous racially or gender-wise or sexuality-wise or like class-wise or like where people grew up. Like, I don't want to be hanging out and all my friends are from California. Like, I moved to Seattle so that I could meet people probably unlike and in many cases similar to the people I grew up in California. But like, I really believe in like being a bridge of many different kinds of people. Like, that's my strength. And so I think that is like this kind of social world that I want to create. And so when I enter into other people's social worlds and it is more homogenous, it's not like a deal breaker, but it just means, it just kind of reinforces that like, I can't make one social circle my whole circumference. Like, I really need to have like a lot of little pools. And then when I create my own, like the metaphor I gave to a friend, and I don't know if they fully grokked it, was I feel like when I'm convening friends together, I'm not just like pulling from one 8-person group chat or like one 6-person friend group. Like, I really don't feel like I have like any really structurally sound friend group besides like little 3-person friendship trio situations. Which a trio friendship, that's something different entirely. And if you've watched this season of The White Lotus, you'll understand. I did appreciate the representation of 3-person friendships, although their dynamic was very foreign to me in a lot of ways. There was a lot of spite there. But anyway, I like to basically, like, for that Moisture Festival, right? I just thought about who are all the people in my life that would enjoy, that enjoy going to live events, that enjoy local shows, that enjoy comedy, that are open-minded to like kooky things, that maybe have a strong sense of humor. And so I just text all those people, and then the people that could go came. I never made a group chat for it. I just individually texted everybody. I could have made a group chat, but I convened them all. Like, I pulled little drops of water out from all these disparate ponds, and they formed this nice little handful of water. And then after that afternoon was done, we parted ways. I let the water flow back into their respective ponds. And I'm like, I like to have my social life be more fluid in that way than fixed by a set friend group. And in Patreon book club on Zoom this past month, we read Kill the Couple in Your Head, this zine that I spoke about in last month's episode. And the discussion around it was so incredible. I took so many notes on it. And one of the questions I asked in book club was, have you ever felt claimed by a friend group? Has it ever been restrictive to your intimacy, affection, etc.? Because in some ways, a friend group is a template. Am I right? Am I right? It's a template for who to hang out with, right? But I started out I definitely have had friend groups, for sure. But I've come to understand, like, politically, they just don't really operate within, like, my framework. That's a little bit more chaotic than that and fluid, like, genuinely. And so I kind of have made my own something. I've like let the template fall away and I've kind of made my own social life. But one quote from that piece, because Kill the Couple in Your Head is about not like just a romantic couple, but like the framework of a pairing, a couple being something that like has influence over who you share intimacy with. The couple represents basically mutual management, mutual governance, mutual control. And that's also, and part of this piece talks about a couple can be anything. Sometimes you can be in a couple with a friend, and I definitely have been, I've been in several couples in my life, and I'm sort of reinterrogating and renegotiating with the role of the couple and like whether I want to enter into that again in the way that it's been sort of contracted out. But in this piece, the author was saying, I've been trying to navigate crew formation more informally, something fluid and context specific rather than permanent and formal like a cell. We can form an affinity group for a specific project, and upon its completion, we can allow this group to die, allowing for the birth of new constellations of affinity that grow from these experiences. Having different possibilities of action within many unique relations that can change according to the needs of projects without stable boundaries of inside and outside allows us to act within a web rather than a unit. And so I'm like, I like my world to feel like a lot of tributaries flowing into one, a web, something like this, it's a lattice, not a unit, not a discrete unit that's like closed. And I think that's like one of the qualities of a friend group to me is that it does feel like a closed circuit. And yes, you can invite new people into it. And I have been invited into other people's friend groups. And I find myself in a position where it does feel like I'm on the outside, entering closer and closer to the circle of it. Like I'm on the fringe of this very established thing, and not that it is something that's been convened just for this one event or this one trip or whatnot. And that's why I really value in my gatherings and in the trips that I host, like the one I went on in Alaska, is like, I don't want it to be a situation where everyone knows everyone. I really like it when I can make an environment where nobody knows everyone. Like everyone has the opportunity to meet and get to know a new person there, and that no one feels like everyone else has shared experience and they're on the outside. Because I'm like, you can do so much work to make someone like that feel included and to avoid talking about things that they don't know about. But also you can just set up the structure so that that person's not even in that position, that there are other people that are, not familiar with everyone there. And that's why I really like going to parties, because I like I like being a plus one, because I'm like, I like having the feeling that like I can wear my mustache wig out one night and nobody knows if I usually look like that or I don't. And it's like, I get to meet people where I'm at for that night without any of the past knowledge of me influencing how they receive me that evening. I was just really affirmed by reading this person's declaration of how they approach their social life. And this was also talking more about like anarchist organizing and whatnot, but it's all very similar. I think like when I experience someone else's social circle to be more homogenous, it just reaffirms that like I should continue to be a floater because I don't think I'm built to be in a friend group and just accept like whatever's going on that's being predetermined. Like I really appreciate the construction of my social life and like really making it something, again, not templated, but like my own. And that really corresponds to like my values and my interests and whatnot. So we must turn to waxing and waning, taking and leaving for this month. And there's so much. There's like so much. This was like a mega month of revelations, but let's see it through. And if you'd like to provide me with some data of who is still listening at this point, you can leave a moon, any type of moon emoji in the comment section, and that will let me know if this is too much. Because I will say when a podcast is like 1 to 2 hours, a lot of times I will get like 57% of the way through or like 80% of the way through. It's like takes a very special podcast or a podcast guest to have me listening all the way through. So if that's you, thank you very much, because I don't front load these things so that all the strongest revelations are in the beginning. So sometimes maybe the best thing I have to say is at the end, and I don't chop and screw this to like rearrange things. So anyway, something that I just moved into the taking list was this phrase that I'm trying out of being lonely for information, because I did download this pamphlet from August Lamb on downgrading to a dumb phone. I think August Lamb is such a compelling writer and is truly a gifted and free thinker. Like, does not seem weighed down by the expectations of masses in maybe the same way that I'd expect her to. I don't know. Anyway, in that pamphlet, at the very beginning, she's talking about like one of the main compelling reasons, one of the main driving forces of her using her smartphone was like she had a question and she needed an answer. She was lonely for information. She felt this like pang of like, I need to feel accompanied by the answer to this. And how one of the main like transitions of downgrading was like getting used to that feeling of like, I'm just not going to know which movie that actor was in, and I'm just not going to know exactly what year that movie came out, and I'm not going to know the etymology of that word, you know? Or like you can look it up at the library, you can find other sources for that. I love phoning a friend. I literally have one friend, shout out to you if you're listening, that is my own personal Shazam, and when I cannot figure out the song or the tune that's stuck in my head, I will send her a voice note, and 87% of the time she gets it. But anyway, a lot of those things aren't immediate, right? It's not as immediate as literally AI spelling it out for you exactly what you need to know at the top of your browser. And so it's like retracting from that expectation of like immediate delivery of information. And now that I am claiming my Mercury in Aquarius as being like a meaningful title in my life, that's something that I deeply relate to. And I have been toying with like how much I want to sort of like retract from digital capture. And so I think I'm going to notice, and I want to start noticing my loneliness for information this next month, and maybe like checking in with it before I just like immediately quell it by searching. I'm also taking kindly asking people to shut the fuck up at concerts. Going back to the mean thing, one way I was so proud that I wasn't mean this month was at another concert, two guys next to me chatting before the concert, during the opener, after the opener, yelling over the loud songs, talking during the quiet parts, just indiscriminately going back and forth in conversation. It was not like a quick oh yeah, totally. It was not one of those. It was like very much they're actively having an ongoing conversation. And I was getting irritated. I was getting mad because I was just like, I'm tired. Like it's such a catch-22 of like, if I want to be at the back of the crowd in the GA section so that I have more space to like dance, it means I'm also usually more in earshot of the people at the back that are talking, because they're not as like, I don't know. I don't know why they're talking. Maybe it's because my pet theory is like they're not as invested in the artist, because the dynamic of the two guys next to me was one was a big fan and one was just like his buddy that he took to the concert because he didn't want to go alone. I was there alone because I had not identified a friend that was a fan like I was, and I just don't want to be worried about someone else's good time at a show. I don't want to be thinking about how they're interpreting the music and if they're liking it. I don't want to feel like I don't know. I just want to feel free. And so I'm like, and also a concert is a place you can meet people. And I did meet the person that was dancing next to me, and we talked during the intermission, and lovely 20-minute conversation. He got my number. So I was like, okay, love to queen out. So I don't know. I guess I just want to encourage, this is something that I can sell. If this is something I can sell, this idea I'd love to sell, put on the market. You don't have to take someone to a concert if you can build the skill of meeting someone at a concert. Like if you want the experience of talking to somebody at a concert, which I do. Like the reason that I started chatting up the guy next to me during the break between the opener and the main act was that I was like, I actually had thoughts about that opening act that I wanted to share with somebody. And I didn't want to turn to my phone and text people that weren't there. I wanted to talk about it with someone who was in the context and nuance of that moment. And I was like, well, there's someone right there. And then I just, quickly asked, like, were you familiar with that opener before? And he was like, no. And I was like, I thought they were so great. And he was like, yeah, me too. And we just launched into it and it was so natural. And so I was like, you know what? I've made my buddy for the night, right? I'm not expecting, honestly, that like we will become the best of friends. A lot of times you meet people in those settings and then you do just kind of forget to meet up, or like you're not in close enough proximity for the relationship to thrive. But I don't really mind. It was like so nice to have that companionship just for that one night, like serving that purpose. Like that's the kind of fluidity that I really appreciate. And I'm okay with the ephemerality of that. I really do value that. And I'm not looking to extract permanence out of everything. Anyway, the guys next to me, different dynamic. Clearly one felt the need to like entertain the other by like talking to him all the time or whatever. And I get it. It's like if you're stoned at a concert and like you're feeling chatty or whatever, I understand that more than anyone. Okay. However, there's a time and a place for it. And it's distracting not only to your fellow audience members, but to the performer. Because like I've been on stage before, not in that venue, but I've been on stage before, and you can hear people talking in the audience. You can't see them if the lights are down unless the lights are shining on the audience, but you can hear them. And there have been many recent cases of artists literally on stage into the microphone asking people to shut the fuck up because they were talking too loud. And it's like, people think they have anonymity in the crowd like that, but it's like, no, you don't. And also like in being a patron of the arts, part of it is like, if you want a good performance, you shouldn't be distracting the performer, Like if you want the best performance, because I don't do well on stage when like I can tell someone's having a conversation while I'm performing and I'm having to talk over them. It just like feels like it's just clutter, And so I was like, if you really like this artist and you paid money to be here, wouldn't you want to get the best show you can get? And that involves not talking during it. Like there were just so many reasons why I was like, it's just not sensible to do this, right? It's self-serving and I get it. It's like you're in your own little world, but I didn't want to just complain about it on here to my friends, whatnot, without at least trying to see if I could do something about it. Because I was like, I could be bitter for half this show, or I could let my intuition guide me because clearly I want to say something. Like clearly I do, but then I had to formulate what I wanted to say. And I basically came to the conclusion that I wanted to ask them, hey, would you mind waiting to talk until after the song is over? Because I don't have a problem with people, having a little aside in between songs. I like to do that. We were like, oh my God, that one was amazing. While people are clapping, like definitely clap and cheer and whatnot. But if there's something you need to say in between, like that's the time you can get it out before the next song starts. But then I had the problem of like, okay, if I wait for in between the song to ask them that, then I'm not catching them red-handed, and they could be like, oh, we weren't talking during the song. It's not during the song right now, So it's like, okay, well, but if I talk to them about it during the song, then I'm no better than them because I'm just modeling what I don't want to see happen. Like I'm doing what I'm telling them not, like asking them not to do. So basically I was like, oh my God, I don't want to just non-verbally just like shake my head or like do some sort of like condescending, like shut the fuck up maneuver or like shush them, because I'm like, shushing is just not inviting. It is very shameful. And ultimately, if I'm going to say something, I don't want to say something to exercise my spite. I want to say something to make this a better experience for me. Like, I want a solution. I'm not looking to make further problems, you know? I don't want backlash. So I don't want them to be like encouraged to like literally talk more because they're pissed off, you know, because they got caught. So I wait until in between the song they're talking, and then they keep talking through the start of the next song. And it's very like ambient, kind of ethereal, instrumental. And so it's very quiet and they're just talking. And so I tap one of them on the shoulder and I was like, hey, would you mind waiting until the song is over to talk? And he couldn't. He was like, what? And I was like, could you wait until the song is over to talk? And he was like, maybe. And internally I was like, maybe? Like, what an odd response to that, you know? I was like, okay. So sort of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. But then basically had to confer with his buddy. And then a little while later, he kind of looks over me and he gives me like a thumbs up, like we're good kind of thing. And I give him a thumbs up back. And I'm like, okay, amazing. Okay. Look how easy that was, you know? And I actually got what I wanted. And then like truly the rest of the show, they did not talk during the songs. And then during the break in between one of the other songs, he turns to me and he's like, hey, just wanted to say like, thank you so much for coming to us in that way. Like he said something to the effect of like, that was really kind or nice or cool or something, just something really affirming. And I was so confused. I was like, holy shit, I am literally being thanked right now for calling them out. And I was like, this, and I've been the person before where I have thanked somebody for being so respectful in the way that like he rejected me. And I think that is like, I was like, I'm good. I don't need therapy. I was like, that is the level of like emotional like collectedness that I want to get to, is that I can find like good faith compassion that's like authentic to me and convey that. Like, I don't know why, I want to model being respectful, because if I'm being disrespectful to them, I could do that because they've been disrespectful to me, but I'm like, I want to show them, okay, there's another way to be a little bit more respectful at a concert, at least to me. I'm pretty sure other people around me share the same thing. And I will say, the concert ended, people left, and then there was an encore. And so they kind of shuffled closer. And so they were like another 20 feet away. They were out of my earshot. And I did kind of steal a couple glances their way during the encore just to check if they were still talking, and they were. So like they did start talking after they were out of my earshot, and I was like, okay, well, I didn't fix it. Like, I didn't solve it for everyone. Like, they're still going to be terrorizing whatever concert they go to. They were just respecting my boundaries, and I appreciate that, but I was just hoping that they could extrapolate that, like, maybe if I had the courage and like had it within me to like ask them, that maybe some other people share the same thing. But also it's kind of like those people next to them, if they got that message twice in one night, that would really send it home. So I just want to take kindly asking people to shut the fuck up more at concerts, at movies, wherever. Like, there's a kind way to do it that can actually be a ritual of like mutual respect. But then they ultimately did get their karma handed to them, because there was a girl next to them that was talking so loudly that I could hear her from like 30 feet away. So I was like, maybe they realize that experience is not nice. So yeah. I'm also taking sitting at communal tables. I had 2 experiences sitting at communal tables this past month that were such easy examples of like turning towards each other. This has been like a main refrain for me philosophically, is like, how do we turn towards each other and reject our fear of each other? And I think communal tables, when you walk into a place and there's a lot of two-tops or like booths, and then there's a big communal table, the communal table is usually, I feel like, or at least in my experience, sort of like a last resort, where it's like, okay, if all the other tables are taken, I guess I got to sit down with my laptop and my coffee at the communal table. That's kind of like the holdover, you know, just like, okay, well, this is for the leftovers, you know? Or like, I wish it weren't that way. I wish the communal table were a way to signal I am open to talking to other people. Because I think a lot of times, no, you're not. You're there to like literally finish that reading you have to do before class, or like log on and apply to jobs. Like maybe like you have shit to do, but maybe it's a Sunday morning and you're just kind of there leisurely because you have some time to fill. That sounds amazing. Would love that to happen to me. And that was the position I was in with my friend. We were at this tea spot, and a spot opened up at the communal table, and we moved down towards it. And my friend immediately starts chatting up the girl that's sitting right there. And we have this really lovely conversation. Then she, puts her headphones back on and turns back to her computer at a certain point. But it was like, you know what? This would not have happened, right? Like if we were not sitting at a communal table. And then I hosted an event that had communal tables. And the last time I had done that event was at like Two Tops. And everyone was so much more eager to break out of their shells and meet each other. And I watched like two 50-something-year-old men exchange numbers by the end of the bingo night, because sitting next to each other at the communal table offered them the proximity to like spark that relationship. And so I'm like, let's stop viewing those as last resorts, or I'm going to stop viewing them as last resorts. I also am taking quieting the stress of planning events by referencing the confidence you can get when you have enough experience. And this kind of actually does call to mind templates a bit, because like I am building the skill of like hosting gatherings, hosting events, planning events. Like that's like a craft of mine. And another craft of mine is like performance, like musical performance, stand-up comedy performance. I was a tour guide. I do like this like digital performance, so like I'm used to speaking publicly. I have public speaking skills. And so that is never something I am stressed about or worried about for any type of event that I'm hosting. Like I could be hosting an event with 100 attendees, and I'm not worried about speaking to them on the mic, because I've been doing that for so long, like literally since like middle school, I have been public speaking. So I'm like, I've got that down. But if it's like preparing food, I'm not as confident, right? So that can give me stress. And I guess I'm just recognizing that like I want to find ways to quiet the stress of planning the event, but like until I just get more experience with preparing food for an event and knowing how much to have for people, knowing like how to set it out, like all of those little things, I'm not going to get that fine-tuned and perfect until I just host more, Like I just got to get through it, and then the stress will decrease by doing. Okay, and then my last taking is organized spirituality. I have attended 2 services, spiritually based, services in the past couple months. And I really value having an outlet for contemplation like that. Obviously, this is one huge outlet for contemplation, but I was thinking about how I think like I really do value having outlets for like ministry that aren't social media. And I think a lot of times I come on here to give my ministry. Like here is this moral lesson that I'm going through, or here is this like story that I'm grappling with and learning for. Like it feels like I am like trying to share like what's being revealed to my spirit, right? Which like there's so many different types of churches and like spiritual centers and faith-based places. I did go to a Quaker service, and that is lay. I don't even know if they consider themselves lay-led, but it is like autonomous. So there's like people that facilitate the session, but there's no preacher, there's no minister, there's no one telling you. You all just get to stand up, and the service is made from members there just standing up and speaking about what's on their heart and mind. And like, I just found that it felt like my brain is so perverted that I was like, this is just like a social media feed. But I was like, that's why I like open mics too, because it feels like a feed, an in-person feed for me to be like, here's what I'm going through. And other people are like, here's what I'm going through. And I'm like, cool. I'm noticing that. I'm paying attention. we're all getting reception for those ideas. And I also noticed that like organized spiritual faith-based places like do tend to skew older. And I wonder like if our generation, if we get to that age, if we will return to places like that, or if social media is going to eclipse the need for those places, because I don't know, I just think church can be a great venue for meeting up with other people who meeting up with a collective of people who also want to like talk about the human spirit and like mysticism and like what they believe in. And you can talk about that. If it's a more hierarchical, like authoritarian kind of church style, you can talk about that maybe after the service. But I like when there are services where like you as a member like are encouraged to like offer your ministry, and that we are all teachers, we are all students kind of thing. We're all ministers, we're all congregation members. So I don't know how regularly I'll be attending, different spaces, but like I am appreciating having a venue for that isn't parasocial, but social. But I'm also thinking about how I can just build that with my own friends. Like you can do, I was joking about doing like a soul Sundays where it's like Sunday at 12 at the park. Like we're going to meet up. I'll be here. And if we want to like check in about like what's on our heart and our minds, what's our joys and our sorrows, like what are we really like deeply thinking about? Like that can be, Revelatorium IRL, start those with your friends. Maybe you guys can start it. I'm going to pilot it. If anyone else wants to, let me know. I don't know exactly when I'm going to pilot it. Could be a year in the future, but like I'm growing the seed of that. Okay. I am recognizing the monstrous length of this episode, and while I could leave it intact, I am feeling like splitting it might be easier on the listener. So this is going to be the end of part 1, and part 2 will have my leaving and your side of the Revelatorium.